Hi, I'm Heather Strader, and this is A Place of Yes. In each episode, we have honest conversations about grief, the messy parts, the unexpected moments, and the ways we begin to heal. Through heartfelt stories and expert advice, my hope is to offer you comfort, connection, and a reminder that you don't have to navigate this alone. Today, I'm joined by Carrie Pill, a professional oil painter, mountain athlete, and writer living in Vermont. Carrie lost both her mom and her stepmom within a year, and in this conversation, she reflects on what it means to grieve when your relationships weren't always simple, and how art and movement have helped her make sense of the waves of emotion that followed. We talked about the emotional release of trail running, the way skiing helped her feel joy again, and how writing became a tool for connection and healing. Carrie also shares what she's learning about self-compassion, post-grief identity, and showing up for others in their hardest moments. Her story is tender and honest, and I'm grateful to share it with you. So I'm sitting here today with Carrie Pill. She is a professional oil painter living in Rutland, Vermont. She's also a writer, a mountain athlete who loves nature and community. And as you can expect from being on the show, she's also a griever. She lost her mom and her stepmom in about a year's time. And welcome to the show, Carrie. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me and giving me somewhere to talk about my personal experience with grief. I love that word that you used, griever. I haven't used that as a way to identify myself, but it is something that, we could kind of carry as a badge of, something that we're going through and we've gone through.
Absolutely. And I think it's, for me at least, it's one of those ways that where it unifies us to some degree, right? Like, it makes you feel less alone, because I think grief can be so lonely, but it makes you feel a little less alone when you know you've got other people in it with you. So we often start the show with a little bit of a light question before we really get into it. And one of the things I've been asking all of my guests this season is something that you have said yes to lately. And I have started giving an example so that I don't just say, hey, off the top of your head. So my thing is actually something that I am doing this afternoon. And it's funny. I feel like one of the things that is my pet peeve is when people talk about, oh, I'm too busy, I'm too busy. Yet sometimes
Mhm.
I catch myself doing the thing that drives me nuts, and it's saying I'm too
Mhm.
busy. So
Mhm.
I have a lunch date today with a dear friend of mine who lives less than a mile away, yet we never see each other because we fall victim to the like, oh, I'm too busy. Oh, my schedule, blah, 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 blah. And we both just were like, this is ridiculous. So we're meeting for lunch. We're going to like this local diner and having like, I don't know, omelets or something, like we're 100 years old. But we are. But I'm so looking forward to it. So it's an easy yes, but it's something that I said yes to and I'm really excited about.
I think what comes to mind immediately is that I started trail running about a year and a half ago. And I have been saying yes to my own curiosity about what can I do. I run with a group of women weekly, and we sometimes talk about running events and different distances and goals and stuff. And I have done 2 race events this summer, which is new for me. I never did that. And then I'm now just kind of following that curiosity of like, oh, I wonder if I could do this event. So I signed up for one that's on the 22nd of November. I did recently learn that those of us that are carrying some traumas of some sort, it's the rhythm of those long distances where you're just focusing on your steps and your breath and everything, that it's very cathartic for us for healing and just to kind of escape to that. I don't know about you, but like the chaos of everything going on in the world, plus whatever else we're dealing with, like getting into some sort of endurance activity, you're not thinking about a lot of that stuff for that period of time. And I think that's so good for us to just take a break from it.
No, I agree. And for me at that time, it was honestly, I always sort of said it was a little bit like life-saving because it just got me, and exactly that, it got me out of my own head.
Yeah.
Um, Even if it was just trying to like remember to breathe because I was like before that, I was like, I would run 3 miles just more for like fitness or calorie burn or like whatever. And then all of a sudden I was like going out and doing like 8, 10 miles. Like, and I was sort of enjoying it, which was very
Mhm.
strange.
Mhm.
No, so that's interesting. Well, I wish you the best of luck on the 22nd. I will be
Thank
thinking of
you.
you. That's a super exciting, um, challenge for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's start talking, if you are good with it, about your mom. And would you be willing to share a little bit, just about her and her story?
Yeah, absolutely. So my mom was this wonderful, loving woman. She's a lot of I have her to thank for a lot of the things that have really given my life love and depth and vibrancy. Um she was always a great neighbor, um, loved running into people, loved very generous. She would make special gifts and cook things and for people in the community. She was a volunteer at the local theater for many years, building sets and costumes. She sewed our clothes and costumes when we were kids. She was an amazing cook and gardener and knew how to take care of animals and had so much compassion for animals. Um, a lot of these things that I've can see in myself that have been influenced by her and nurtured by her too. And then also an incredible artist. You can have creativity in your family, but if it's not nurtured, if you aren't given the materials and the time and some encouragement, it's like this wonderful concoction of like you will have an artist if you provide these things for your child. And I had all of that in spades thanks to my mom and my dad. There's creativity definitely on both sides. But she ever since I could remember, was creating things. She was she would call herself a folk artist because she never had any formal training. Um, but she always painted and did wood carvings and, of animals and different scenes. And she actually used to do a lot of craft fairs, and that's where she had her biggest success. There was a big boom of those in the 80s, and she did a really good job. And we would travel to places like Vermont, which is why I ultimately ended up here because I had some of the best memories of coming to the shows with her when she packed up all our things to the craft fairs. And it was just like I came from a flat area from Watertown, New York, and pastoral and everything. And then just seeing the mountains, it was just like this magical place. And I wanted to come back here.
Well, that's awesome, in a place where you felt connected to her as well. It must be kind
Yeah,
of special.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So, how long ago did she pass away?
It was, gosh, last, was it last January? No, 2 years ago.
Isn't that crazy how, like, it's such a monumental thing, but it's hard to, like, process. I feel like time is hard to process with grief, right? Like,
It is. Because
it's just the
you're
past.
like kind of stuffing it away,
Yep,
but
for
you
sure.
want to honor it. It's like, you know.
It's hard to find that balance, I think, for sure. And, emotions around grief, right? Like, it's just so hard. Like, there's the sadness, which is sort of, in some cases, the kind of the primary feeling, but it's also the expected feeling. And I think then there's also these other things. And you and I had talked about this when we first spoke, and it was kind of, we talked about that when you know that it's happening, like when you start to process grief before the actual death.
Yeah.
And, they have like a fancy name for that, like anticipatory loss, anticipatory grief. But the fact is that sometimes can be challenging, right? Because it's like you're grieving before it even happens. And then, um, can you share some of those feelings? Because I think, we had talked about like how you experienced some of that.
Yeah, I think so my dad actually explained that to me when his wife Kathy passed away, and like you had mentioned, she passed about a year before my mom did. And he when he called to tell me that day, he's like obviously I'm heartbroken. He's like, but I've been preparing for this for the last year because she had been very sick with glioblastoma, the brain cancer. And I can absolutely relate to that. My mom's health was never great. As long as in the lifetime that I knew her, it was better, obviously, when she was younger. Um, so for a couple of years before she passed away, my sister's brother and I, we were all kind of dealing with the ups and downs of some close ones, and her struggles with just trying to heal and navigate all the emotions and difficulties of living with, all of her health issues. She had heart issues, high blood pressure, and congestive heart failure, and liver issues ultimately were what took her. But yeah, I think it definitely takes its toll on you, the anticipatory grief. Just, I remember trying to do things that I had been doing, like going out and mountain biking. It fills you with like some stress, but also like some good chemicals to get through that.
It's like that good adrenaline or something, right?
Yeah. But I remember there were times when I was asking a lot of myself within that sport, and then I was feeling like I just couldn't operate like I normally was, because I felt like I was so stripped with and filled with cortisol, and like, but I didn't realize that until after, like, that's what was wrong. I kept beating myself up, like, what is wrong with me? I can't do anything. And it's like, no, like, your whole body is feeling this, and you only have so much to give, and within that stress.
It's one of the things that I think these conversations are so important and helpful, because what you are describing, so many people feel, whether it's anticipatory or in the hearts of grief. And we have this image in society of what grief looks like. And so often it shows itself in such different ways. And that's kind of it, right? So we're like mad at ourselves for like not being able to perform or to get the work done or to accomplish what we think we should or typically could. But we have to give ourselves that space. But before we can even give ourselves space, we have to understand what it's coming from. And I think that's kind of what you're
Yeah.
saying, right? Like
Yeah.
it's so hard.
Had I known, I would have given myself more grace.
You
Absolutely.
know, because it is, it's just, it, like, sneaks up on you and you don't know what it is,
Mhm.
and I think for so many people, they experience things like that, whether it is through mountain biking or through work or through just, "I don't understand why I'm not accomplishing what I usually do," it's just that
Yeah.
heaviness, and stress, right? Like, your body is stressed, and it's showing you that it's stressed, but we don't always know what to do with that.
Absolutely.
There was a story you told, and I'm hoping you can share it with the audience because it has stayed with me in so many ways. You told the story of like where you were and what you were doing when you learned of your mom's passing. Thinks there's so much of
Oh,
that.
Cindy.
Sorry, no, I went
I
right
know
in.
what you're
But
talking about.
but I
Oh.
just love that story. So I was hoping you would be comfortable sharing that, and then we could talk a little bit about it because I think there were so many important pieces.
So, yes, like I said, it had been years of my mom's health decline, and then, just the ups and downs of that. But basically, anyone that's gone through something similar, you're always waiting for that phone call. It was a Sunday, and um typically in the winters and the Sundays, we would go ski with friends at our local hill at Pico Mountain. And I had gone in to warm up, grab a drink of water, and happened to check my phone, and there was a voicemail from my sister. And it's funny, you picture finding out in a certain way, but you never know how it's going to happen. And I just didn't anticipate finding out in this way. So my sister left the information on a voicemail, and now I understand. I think she wanted me to know as soon as possible. She didn't want me to find out some other weird way, like on a Facebook post or something. So if she couldn't reach me, she left a voicemail, and I totally understand that. So I tried to call her. I think we weren't able to connect immediately, but then I think we eventually connected, and it was short. Kind of, she was making a lot of calls and everything. She's the oldest, so kind of she was taking on that responsibility of letting more of the extended family know. Um, but yeah, so I talked to her, and then I remember just like sitting down on the floor in the lodge, and the lodge was busy. It was like, a holiday week or something. And it was like a powder day, so it was just people all around.
Everyone's out.
But in a way that was kind of comforting, because it was just kind of like you could kind of just feel unnoticed and just kind of like sink into that. And so I sat there for a little bit, and then I think I was able to tell my husband. Ultimately, I decided to just hop back in the lift line. Mom died in January, and this kept coming up for me, like the feeling guilty about just wanting to go ski and be around people felt weird to me. And it's this again, like this, what you think you're supposed to do. It's like all these preconceived notions of how it's supposed to look. But it just felt like what I needed to do in that moment. And again, I'd been preparing for it. So I was very sad and still kind of processing it, and it didn't feel real. But I wanted to be around my friends, and they had their children with them, and they always just make me so happy, all of them, and my husband. And I just kind of like let myself be wrapped in their joy and kindness and understanding, and just let myself, go make some turns and zone out in that for a couple minutes, and then hop back on the chairlift. Maybe we say a couple more things about it. They let me curse, and, we go do it again. And it just, yeah, it felt strange, but also it felt like just so normal. It just felt like this is how I've been dealing with all of this all along, and anything, not just with what my mom was doing, but anything that was ups and downs with life. Like anyone that is an outdoor athlete of any kind, like it's still such a part of you. And it's how we get through our everyday, like whatever is going on. So yes is the heaviest thing to bring out there, but it just felt kind of natural.
I mean, I honestly, I'm so grateful that you were willing to share that story because I do think it's so, I mean, I think it's a beautiful story, right? And I think that it is also, you touched on so many things, right? And in that moment, like, you're constantly in that type of situation, you're waiting for like the ball to drop, the phone call. You know it's going to happen. And even when you know it's gonna happen, it happens, it just you're still never ready. You're ready, but you're not ready. And I think allowing yourself to there's nothing if you dropped everything and went home, nothing would have changed, right? Like, and that's a little bit when you talk about, like, this expectation that we have created, whether it's, like, the Hollywood image or just, whatever that is of what grief should look like and what you should do. It's really so personal, right? And I just think the fact that you could take that moment, and I totally get what you say about, like, you know, how it's kind of comforting being surrounded like that it was a busy day of skiing and people in the lodge. So it's almost like you're surrounded, you're not alone, but you're also kind of invisible. Everyone's doing their own thing, like, they're
Yeah.
not really paying attention to you.
Yeah.
But then you're with your most important people, and you're having this moment, and it's almost like, I don't know, like, I envision almost, like, yes, you're pissed and you're kinda cursing and you're this, but you're also having this moment with your mom maybe, like, and having these, like I just think it's so important, and I just thought it was such a beautiful way to honor her and to honor your own grief. So
Yeah.
I just love those moments because I think when we give into them, they end up being healing as opposed to doing what we think we're supposed to do.
Absolutely. Like, why do we do that to ourselves? You know?
About everything, right? Like, not just
Yeah.
grief, but, like, I do think, like, now you've got this, like, "Hey, this is where I was when I learned it." And instead of it being super dark, it's kind of like I was surrounded by these really important people, and it
Yeah.
and I did the thing I love to do, and it's
Yeah,
almost part of the process of healing as opposed to a dark memory.
for sure. And then that place also becomes like an extension of home too. If I feel very comfortable there, and it's so kind of, although it feels odd to be at a ski resort and still remain there when it happened, it just, you know.
Well, I also think there's that moment too of like, and I don't know if this was for you, but I can think of it in some of my own experiences. It's like, I think of life in like the before or after sometimes, right? Like what it was like right before Jake died, before I knew that, like, and sometimes you want to live in that before just a second more. And it's a little different because once you know, but like it's before you get into the phone calls and the conversations. And there's that piece of grief too where like you're letting people know, but then even though you're the one feeling all the feels, you're making other people feel better. You know what I mean? Like, it's before
Yeah.
any of that happens. You
Yeah.
get this, like, little reprieve almost of, like, just to sit with it.
No, you're so right. I think that may have been part of it too. It was like, yes, I was talking about it and letting myself process it, but I was also kind of putting off that time when I go home and have to be in a room by myself and think about it.
And
Um,
face it in a different way.
yeah, yeah. I was able to also, this also felt like a weird part of grieving, but just in the conventional sense. But like for the following several weeks after that, um, that was when it like felt really heavy and isolating. And I remember like it would be the end of the day, kind of the afternoon, there'd be like 1 hour left of the mountain being open. And I will have done whatever I could for work for the day or nothing. And then I would just pack up all my stuff and make myself go. And I would often be alone. I would just hop on the chairlift, but just like getting that fresh air and like so my mom always thought winter was beautiful, but she didn't like being cold, and she was like, I don't know how you do that." She's like, it sounds so cold." I'm sure we all know somebody like that.
Yep.
But it felt like I was also spending time with her, like when I'm out in nature. Um so that felt really good, and that was an important part of my grieving and acceptance, was just making those little hour here, hour there, windows happen.
I think do you still feel like you do that? Like, when you're out in like, whether you're, like, biking or running, like, do you
Mhm.
still feel like those are
Yeah, I feel like I carry it with a sense of pride, like, like when the spring ephemerals are blooming in the woods, I'll be out on the trails by myself or with friends, and I'll just like get so excited because like, oh my god, the lady slippers are blooming, and it just feels like I know a lot of that stuff because either my mom taught me or she encouraged me to just be so curious and look all of these things up. And so I have a lot of friends that are like, "Carrie, how do you know all of this stuff?" And it's like, well, either because I was encouraged to like really geek out on this, or because my mom told me. And some things like I only know them by the common names that my mom taught me. In other areas, regions, people are like, "We don't call them that." I was like, Sorry, that's what my mom told me."
I love that though, right? And I think that, um, it's so important for us to have those kind of connections with our people, and especially I don't know if especially is the right word, but, like, human relationships are complicated, right? And all of them are, some more than others. And I think we had talked a little bit about, like, there were some complications as often is, like, in relationships, and a lot of that comes up in grief, like, frankly, even with Jake, like, all these years later, and even though he was only 4 and he was my son, but there's always, like, there's guilt and there is I hate to even say it, but there's, like, relief sometimes, like, there's all of these things that you sort of or that I, all these years later, still am trying to come to terms with, right? Because it's horrible. I wish he never passed. I did not see it coming, but I can look back at that and sort of say our life got a little simpler. Like, it was so hard some days. They were so hard. And then that feels also horrible. It feels horrible even saying it all these years later now. So I feel like that is something that people don't really acknowledge in their grief is that there's all these other things. There's so much more than just sadness. There
Yeah.
is, those things. And I think we had touched a little bit on that feeling of like, what does it look like? And how do you like reconcile all those different feelings? Like, I know I'm always trying to still not feel bad or not feel like I'm feeling something wrong or like, and even though I know that grief looks so many different ways, it's still hard to always believe it and feel okay with it.
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier, like just giving yourself grace because we can be really hard on ourselves, and relationships are so complicated. And my relationship with my mom was complicated. You know, for all of these positive things I've said, there was a lot of difficulty for us, and so with that comes sadness, regret, anger, like all of these other things, and like the woulda, shoulda, couldas, and what if this was different? And, but also like, forgiveness for your parent because I think a lot of us, like, it helps knowing that a lot of our parents just did the best that they could with what they had, at that time, whether it was like emotionally functioning, financially, like wherever they were in life, they were just trying to do their best. Um, and so, yeah, I think grace has helped me a lot just in um processing everything, and because I can be hard on myself, and I think it's just also like the nature of my job. It's a lot of there's so much time and space for introspection and thoughts, and there's so many thoughts, and like I even have like a name for like when negative thoughts start creeping in and they're of no use and they're bad news. Like her name is Constance, and I say, not
Oh,
now, Constance. I
I love
don't
that.
that doesn't do us any good. You don't even know if
Yep,
that's true. You
yep.
know, it's none of our business what other people are thinking. Like, here, let's just work on this painting.
I actually love that you gave it a name. I love
Yeah,
that.
I
You're like,
heard it
"Screw off,
somewhere, I
Constance."
think
Yeah,
on a
yeah, yeah.
podcast.
I love that. I
But it
might
really
steal
helps
that.
like
Yes.
identify, like, because we are not all of our thoughts. Like our brains are just like doing
Doing
this
things. Yeah.
overtime
Yes.
nonsense. And so it's helped me kind of just like separate and kind of get the little devil off my shoulder when it's like, no, this is just we're doing the best we can, and let's
Oh
not
my
beat
god, I
ourselves up
love
for
that
no
so
reason.
much.
Yeah.
Because it's true, you can go down this rabbit hole, and sometimes, like, I've said sometimes I think the rabbit hole is also important, like, if there's a place for it, but there's a place for knowing. For me, there's a place for it, but because I'm so regimented with things sometimes, I'll be like, "Okay, you have 15 minutes to go down the rabbit hole,"
Yeah.
and then
Oh, that's
stop,
good. You put a
like,
limit on it.
I do because otherwise, who knows what'll happen.
Right.
But I do it could get dark. But
Yeah.
I think that, like, also, you're right, our brains are constantly coming up with ways to make already hard situations harder sometimes,
Yeah.
right? So it's like,
Yeah.
I love that almost the lightness of it, of being able, like, to say, like, "Constance, back off, like, I'm busy," like,
Who invited you in here?
"Yeah,
I'm
get
just
out of
working on a
town,"
painting.
and almost giving yourself, like, a giggle over it, like, I mean,
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah,
Yeah, well, I
that's
think,
awesome.
having a silly name helps too. Like, that's not a common name, and,
No,
it's very
it's perfect.
formal.
So it's funny, I have, a friend and who's also been a guest, but he often will text me after an episode and say, like, "I can't tell you everything about the guest at all, but I always have, like, one takeaway," and it's been giving me sort of this different, perspective of the own show
Oh,
and kind of my thing, and I
yes.
realize that I have that too, so I feel like this is my takeaway. I'm not sure what the name's gonna be yet, but I'm gonna have, like, I'm naming it. I
I
love that.
love it. I love
It's
it.
so good. I wanna talk a little bit about, when I first connected with you, I was thinking of you as and we even talked about this. I was like, "Okay, you're an artist and, through this grief, your art must have changed." And I love actually what you said. You were like, "Well, not as much because, like, I love painting, but painting is really it's my job, and it's sort of what I do. But writing is this place where, like, you have evolved and you feel like it's helped you process your grief." You actually wrote this quote on the survey, and I wrote it down because I love it. Like, I'm as someone who's been using writing as a way to sort of process a lot of things, I love this. You wrote, "Grief is isolating, and writing helped me build a bridge back to connection." So
Mm.
can you talk a little bit about that? Because I just think that's so beautifully said.
Yeah, I think that thank you. I think that words in some ways can be more accessible for a larger group of people. Like, I think a lot of people can appreciate art, but like a lot of like people that are within my reach, say on Instagram or Facebook or wherever I would maybe share whatever what I've written, they might not relate to this as well because it's a snow scene, you know. But like with the words, you know, everyone can kind of just start diving in, and if they can start to like, if any of it makes sense or resonates with them, you know, we can connect that way, and I can go on that path. I don't know why I don't know where my earliest connections with writing go. I do remember really loving writing in college. Like we had to write so many papers, and yes, it was a like form of dread also, but it's really just like it was um something that a craft that I loved building, and I found now that it's another way to help also build a bridge to talk about my work too, because sometimes just putting a painting out there is just like, okay, well, what does this mean to you? Why is this important to you, Carrie? So yeah, writing about grieving and writing about my mom was really cathartic in that I could just like I could really highlight what was so special about mom, and then also talk about um you know why, you know, how she helped me, and how much of her is in me, and it really became a way to also like just bring her forward and celebrate her.
No, so there's 2 things you said that made me think of, and one is, like, a writing question, and it's,
Mhm.
do you do you journal, and do you use that as sort of, or do you just kind of have something and you write about it? And I'm always interested in that because I have people who I've talked to on the show and other just friends or colleagues who swear by journaling. They're like, "You really connect with a part of you that you've never known." I don't do it. I don't, not do it, but I've never had that, deep spiritual connection through journaling. I often just kind of, write what is it's interesting, those thoughts that I can't get rid of sometimes,
Mhm.
I find that there's a piece there. There's something that I wanna write, and whether anybody else reads it or not is sort of almost irrelevant, but it helps. It's, almost my own therapy of, once I figure out what it is that's, won't stop talking and what I won't stop hearing in my head, I put it down,
Mm.
it helps. So how do you do it? Do you do it by or all of the above?
So
Are you a journaler?
I don't have like a regimented like, you know, I'm going to journal every morning for an hour or whatever. There are definitely like all kinds of schools of thought that like you need to have some sort of a journaling schedule or something. Really, I've always like had like a sketchbook at the very least, which I also write in. I remember I wrote a lot of poems in high school. You know, you have all that like anguish and everything you want to get out. Um, and so yeah, I think it's just whenever I feel like I need to get it out, you know what I mean? And I recently in the last like 3, 4 years have an addiction to these spiral notebooks. Which is so silly. They're very basic, but I really like this kind of decomposition ones. They have all these like
Okay, yep.
artist designs on them. And there's a ton of them here in my studio. So they're filled with painting ideas and like information about my taxes and trips I want to go to. And then but there'll also be like 3 pages about mom, and so it's just it's nice to I really like the physical form of like having paper, and this is another like I cannot get enough of a nicely sharpened yes number 2 pencil. These are
I'm
from
obsessed.
Ticonderoga too.
Yep, Ticonderoga
Um
number 2. Yeah,
yeah.
I love
And,
these.
it's so funny, like, I just love stationery, but
Well, it's so funny that you held up that notebook because if I wasn't upstairs, downstairs where all my other stuff is, I have one, and my husband sometimes makes fun of me. I've been doing this for years though, but it's exactly what you just said. It could have what I'm doing today. It could have my grocery list. It could have dinners for the week. It could have some of my best writing I've ever done. It could have a page of doodles. It just it's like everything, and then when it's filled, I go to another one.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, I feel like if someone were to look at that, they'd be like, "What the hell is happening in Heather's head?" Because it's there is no structure, there is no rhyme or
Yeah.
reason. Like,
But it's
how do
nice
I
to have
even
a
find
place,
Yeah.
for anything. It's like, I feel like if I didn't do it, everything would just be, like, spinning around in my brain. I had a
Absolutely.
meeting with some, artists at a gallery recently. I'm part of an artist guild, and one of them asked, "Well, did you paint today?" And I said, "No, but you know what I did? I took all of those ideas that have been, like, circling around in a blender in my brain, and I wrote them all down today." And that itself just, like, felt like an enormous weight lifted,
Well, it's
and
like a deep
I have a
breath. You're
plan.
like, "Okay." And it's so interesting because I feel like those type of things, like, when I talk about, like, takeaways for people or whatever,
Mhm.
like, sometimes and we talked a little about it a little bit, like, the way that grief comes out, like, people can think or, they can think that grief is just sadness or grief is just crying, but grief can be, like, all these things happening in your head at the same time. And sometimes you just need to organize it. You know what I mean? Like, and you just need to find a place for it. So it's like, here are all these painting ideas. I can't even start to think about doing the painting until I
Yes.
sort of
Yeah.
have a list to choose from or a list to organize or a list to think about.
Yeah.
I think that grief looks and then that's not to say, like, I think I would have these notebooks anyways. I think I'm always sort of like that, but I do think that one of the things or one of the ways that grief ongoingly impacts me is just that steady rhythm in the back of my head, like, that it's always there,
Yeah.
and that sometimes when I'm not overly busy or, like, there's not a lot going on, then I can manage it, but sometimes it's just that thing that's always
Yeah.
there when there's too much, and
Yeah.
it's hard to work through it. So one of the things, I always like to talk with people about too is this idea about how grief can change us, but also it changes our relationships, right? Like it can change the way that we interact with people. It can change how we view ourselves.
Mhm.
If, husbands, children, if you have children,
Mhm.
friends, like all of the things can be impacted by it. And for me, it's one of the things that I have had to work the hardest to manage.
Mhm.
And I don't always know if it's because it was the loss of my son,
Mhm.
and that just has the ability to, if I let it, make me like a crazy mother to like my other son. Because if it allows me to live in fear and like worry and what if this happens again, like those like that's my constants, right? Like that's the one
Yeah.
I need to be like, "Constance, go away,"
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
or whatever my name is gonna be, but like
Yeah.
that's the cycle that I can get stuck in.
Yeah.
So I know that I have to be diligent about that, but I also know that with grief comes this ability to have, like, in my mind, like, deeper relationships
Yeah.
and value things in a different way, and also frustrated with people who don't value life enough, I think, I get kind of all of the things. But how do you feel like your relationships have changed?
I think it gives most of us more empathy, right? Because, like, it is like, it's something you don't wish on your worst enemy. Because it's just, the pain is undescribable. Like, you can't, it can't compare it to anything. I remember when I was going through it is so isolating. You think that, like, you're the only one, like, because it's just so strong, that feeling. And, um, like I mentioned, I'm part of an artist guild, and a lot of these artists are older than me. Most of them are. And so most of them have already lost their parents. And I remember there was a moment where it like clicked with me. I was talking to one of them about it. And I was thinking, the way I was talking about it, it felt like it was just like a very me experience and very individual. And then I'm like, no, like, all of these people have gone through it. And like, I'm asking for like, hey, maybe can I switch days with someone? I'm asking for these things, for this grace from others. And just kind of feeling like, well, this is just happening to me. But it's like, no, they all remember. They're either going through it, will be soon, or have, and it's hurt them too. So I think it helps you connect with other people too. And I know too, it's helped me enjoy, um, a lot of the smaller things even more. Kind of always felt like I could let a lot of the small things in and really appreciate like a blooming flower or, things I see outside and a good meal and whatnot. And I get that from my mom. But I feel like that even stronger now, because
I
life is
love
so
that.
short.
And I feel like I say that all the time, and sometimes I'm always like, "Oh my god, Heather, you're like one walking cliche." Like, I literally am. Like, everything that I say, I'm like but I'm also like, they're true, right? Like, life is too short, and when you've experienced loss that is, you said it perfectly, like, it can just everyone experiences it, but it feels like you feel so alone, and you just
Yeah.
feel I know I felt, like, kind of crazy too, like, I just felt,
Yeah.
like, so lost in my thoughts and
Yeah.
so, like even though other people are going through it, it's like you forget. It's like it
Yeah.
almost makes you I don't wanna say selfish, but it just makes you so, like or it made me so, like, self-absorbed, like, it
Mhm.
took me a while to recognize even that my husband was going through this, that
Yeah.
my parents were grieving their grandson and watching and grieving, like, they're being sad because they're seeing their only daughter, like, a
Yeah.
mess, like, it impacts everybody, but sometimes it's hard to recognize that.
It's almost like we act that way because it's similar to like when you have a physical traumatic wound, right? We get very like protective and we're very like, this is what's happening to me. This is an emergency. Like this is everything right now. And it's funny, it almost felt like that for me too. It was like this is like the center. This is everything bad. Like this needs all the attention. And it's like, no, a lot of people are going through the same thing at this very moment.
And it's definitely one of the things that this show has given me even more insight to, right? And it's everybody, right? Like, everybody can be part of these conversations one way or another, whether it is their own personal loss or whether it's their best friend or their spouse or whoever has lost something, right? Like, it's like everybody you see at the grocery store, has their own grief story.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then it's one of those things that they will, right? Like, it
Right.
is it's just it's a thing that I almost feel should be so much more, like, unifying than it is. Like, we
Yeah.
always talk about how alone and isolating it is, but it is something that as humans and as community that we are all experiencing. So it's why I love these conversations because it just makes me feel so connected to people that I would never have thought about being connected to before, right? It's kinda cool.
Yeah. I really love again, I mentioned it before, but I love the word griever. I never hear that, and that is something that I feel like can connect more of us and just like, because it's something that, can makes us as painful as it is, it really, can give us a fuller life. We're feeling all of the emotions. We get, to appreciate more of life because we have, you know, gone through this pain.
I actually learned that term from a guest on the show, her name is Shay Wingate, and she used to be on I think she still might be on Instagram as, like, the grief girly,
Okay.
and she would just start showing up on my, like, feed or whatever you call it, and I really loved her, like, take on it, so I ended up, like, connecting with her, and she had quite a grief story, and she just that was one of her things, like, she just was like, "Well, we're all grievers," and same as you, like, it just became something that I started using because I just thought it was such a nice way of saying it without making you feel, like, different or you know what I mean? Like, sometimes
Right.
you can be like, "Oh, you've lost your mom," or, "Oh, you've lost your son," and that becomes your primary identity, and I struggle with that sometimes, so I just like this fact that it's sort of like a universal identity that so many
Yeah.
of us share.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the things you had mentioned too was that you found really helpful getting, like, little gifts from friends. And I love the idea again of like I feel like I've said the word takeaway a lot this episode, but I love the idea of like people who are listening who always say like I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned this earlier, I think, about like how you still want to like when you're out in nature or when you're painting or any of these things when you can or writing and like it gives you that time to think about your person. And ultimately, I think that's what so many of us want to do is have this space to think and talk and mention their name and all of those things. So, if you don't mind sharing, like, what are some of those little gifts from friends that really were impactful, that really made a difference and maybe could be like food for thought for people who are listening?
Yeah. So, oh gosh, it is so tough to reach out to someone that is grieving. And because you feel like there's nothing that you can say and you're so afraid to say the wrong thing. Um, and I know I've been in that position. And what's tough is that a lot of times you don't say anything or it's just yeah, so I guess that's what makes you appreciate those little gestures even more because it is really hard. And I know like when I was grieving the hardest, it felt like two things at the same time. I wanted to be alone. I didn't want to see anybody, and I wanted to be wrapped around surrounded by everybody that I cared about and be given so much love. And it was this very weird, like, and so I feel like you almost have an energy too with that, like where maybe you're giving that off and you don't even know that. And so like people don't even know what to do with that energy. Like so oftentimes they were just like gifts that would just show up at the door and I'd have a text. And it was just like a bag of your favorite things from the store, like a candle, some bath salts, some chocolate, some tea, um, and like a handwritten card. And then another couple sent us like it was like one of those delivery dinners that was really sweet. And what else? Someone gave me a book. Another person gave me like a little like worry stone. Um and also like people share their grief stories and I think that is important and um it's just another way to remember that you're not alone. And yeah, it's really hard to navigate as the friend, but also as the person that's grieving. Like it's such a delicate thing, but you really can be impactful just by even just dropping off something, you know?
I love that, and I love those examples. Like, I've often talked about one of the most impactful things that someone did for me, was, like, just showed up at my door with, like, a Starbucks and was like, "I don't know if it's a good time or not, but here's a coffee, and let's just go get some fresh air," and we didn't go on a long walk, and I was just like basically, I just needed someone to sort of tell me what to do, and it was perfect. But I love that idea of, dropping off, like, tea or, like, a fuzzy blanket or a book or any of those things. It was interesting, actually. Some were books on, like, loss or, like, you know, signs from people and all of that, and I love that, but some were just like, "Hey, here is a really, like, cheesy, brain candy, like, beach
Yeah,
read." All
yeah.
and both of those were, like, equally important to me, right? Because sometimes I just was like, "I just wanna read some nonsense and not think about it." Other
Right.
times, I was like, "Oh, this is so cool." Like, maybe I've known Jake in many lives, and that was kinda cool to think about too. So it's the whole spectrum, right, of, like, just just showing people in even the smallest, simplest of ways that you are there. Because I
Yeah.
think that that is ultimately what we need, right? And what everybody needs. And again, it goes back to using that word griever. Like, we're all, um, going through this. So, like, sometimes it's as simple as thinking of, like, what would have made a difference for me, and then doing that for somebody. And even if it's not, like, hitting it right on the head, it's that gesture. It's that,
Yeah. Yeah. It probably from the person, it doesn't feel like much, but it really makes a difference. You really do. And I know like at that time, I always like I felt so gross and my house was messy and like the last thing I wanted to do was try to like make an effort to look, and tidy up and it's just like everything feels like it takes like so much energy when you're grieving like really hard or when you've just had the loss and like so yeah, just to like show up and just leave it there or whatever. It just, that takes a lot of the pressure off of you. And I appreciated that too.
no, I think those are great suggestions. And I wanna say, Carrie, I've enjoyed this conversation so much, and I love, like, I love looking at you and then this background because what I've been thinking about this entire time, though, is the story you shared of when you learned of your mom's passing
Mhm.
and you were on the ski slope. And I just am looking at that winter picture and I'm just
Mhm.
thinking about that in my own weird way. And it
Mhm.
just feels really beautiful. And it makes me feel like, I don't know, like your mom is part of this conversation. And I love that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because human relationships are so complicated and they're not all picture perfect, right? But like, it is just they're just important and they are part of who we are, and I just am so grateful for you for sharing your story with me and with the guests, and I love that background because for me, it just made it feel even better. So thank
Thank
you
you
for
so
being here.
much. Of course. Thank you for letting me tell my story and having more of a connection about grief through this, through a podcast. Thank
Oh,
you.
and good luck, on your backyard run. I will be rooting for you.
Oh, thank you so much.
For sure. Thank you for listening to A Place of Yes. I hope today's conversation brought you comfort, connection, maybe even a little bit of hope. If it did, I'd love for you to subscribe and share this episode with someone who might need it too. See you next time on A Place of Yes.